Thank you, everybody, and this is a great opportunity to be with you today and this morning. Yesterday, I think, was a fantastic day. You'd agree with me. We had a great opening, great day. We had very interesting discussions regarding the building blocks, a lot of discussions around the building blocks, whether we're talking about modern infrastructure, regulatory requirements, and we try to project ourselves in the future a little bit on how technologies could shape the future. So what will we do today? And why should today be another exciting day? Well, today, as you've seen from the program, we're going to focus on the second aspect, which His Excellency mentioned yesterday, which is how do we make market work for people? How do we not just take markets as a concept, but rather make it relevant for the average, for our average citizens, starting with the marginalized people who are kind of like the least expected clients from capital market from a traditional point of view, but should, considering the number of marginalized peoples that we have in our least developed economies, should be benefiting from these markets. And how do we draw synergies from some of these more traditional approaches? But yesterday we were looking at, and I think Vice President Jingdong really listed some of the achievements that Rwanda has had in the past years. And it struck me that actually the timing for these achievements that he's mentioned started only more or less 5 to 7 years ago. So in a way, Rwanda is really the latecomer, the young kid on the block in this room. I was looking at our colleagues from Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, who started this journey way before we did. And somehow, as Vice President Jingdong was mentioning, we've managed to cover some good grounds, even though we still have a very long way to go, to be quite honest. And I tried to think a little bit about what are the reasons why we managed to change the regulatory framework completely in 5 years, establish the Rwanda Stock Exchange that did not exist, establish the Capital Market Authority that did not exist, establish a central securities depository that did not exist, try to integrate into the East Africa payment and settlement system, do cross-border listing, as we saw yesterday with Equity Bank, do our first sovereign bond issuance ever, and I think the first in the region, and then managed to do several IPOs and taking a very strong stance as government to privatize through IPOs. All that in the space of 5 years. And the question is how? And I think the how is what we saw yesterday, which is political will, and where governments can work with the private sector and with corporations like IFC, is that as a government, you need to be very clear about your sense of direction and where you want to go. And that nobody can do for you. IFC cannot do that for you. I'm not sure that the markets can do that for you. As a government, you need to have a sense of mission and a clarity of mind about what you want to do to develop capital markets, or how developed you want them to be. But then the second step is you may know where you want to go, but you may not know how to get there. And to be honest, when you're a latecomer, when we started, we were not too clear about some of the discussions that were there yesterday about the building blocks. Sometimes we undermined the importance of some building blocks. Sometimes we overestimated the importance of others. But this is where I think the partnership between institutions like the IFC and other institutions we've worked with has been tremendous, because they've done it in other countries and there's no reason to do the same mistakes. And I think at least the government of Rwanda has benefited a lot from the experience of other countries. Some of it are neighbors. We've had a lot of contacts with Kenya and support from Kenya to know how do we take this journey? What is the car that we should have to actually get on this journey? And then the markets kind of determine your speed. So you can know where you're going, have your destination. You've determined along with your partners what kind of car you should be buying, but you really cannot determine the speed unless the private sector is on board and is ready to use this car. And I think this is where we are as Rwanda today, is we need to work with the private sector to determine the speed. That means having products, having companies, more companies listed, kind of demystify the markets. I think there's still a sense that the capital markets are a little bit mystic and complex and sophisticated, and it is our job also as government to demystify the market for our local private sector and on SME, as the CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India elaborated yesterday. But to conclude, we've been talking a lot about Rwanda and a lot about capital markets, and we thought today would be a good opportunity to talk also a little bit more about the region, because this is an East African conference. And I really like to encourage you in the discussions and the panels of today to really look at East Africa as a bloc, because that is how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as part of a bloc, a market, a common area. And to be honest, Rwanda has been a net, we've really benefited from this common market. There have been many initiatives under the East African community to try to integrate the capital markets. But of course, as Rwanda is known for being very impatient, we feel that we could do a little bit faster and push it a little further. But we'd like to tap into your brains to have ideas about how we could make this work better for capital market, and how can capital markets benefit from having one regional bloc, and how can the regional bloc benefit from other capital markets as well. So I think that should be one of the challenges that we give ourselves for today, is that we focus a little bit on the East Africa part of the title of the conference. I thank you very much, and I wish you a great day.